I never thought the first time I'd hold an eviction notice would be in my own mother's living room, with her picture still hanging behind Auntie Mae's shoulder like she was watching the whole thing unfold. It happened on a Tuesday morning in Cedar Ridge, the kind of quiet morning when the sun sits low and warm on the porch rail, and the neighborhood is still smelling like dew and pine. I was standing by the front window, folding my mother's old quilt, when Auntie Mae Thompson, Mama's younger sister, walked in without knocking. She always did that, like the house already belonged to her and I was just borrowing space. She had on one of her big church hats, a dark navy one with the stiff ribbon along the side. She held a manila envelope pressed to her chest, like she was carrying something holy. She wasn't. It was the eviction notice. 30 days to leave the only home I had left. Marjorie, she said, soft and sugary, the way people talk before they deliver bad news they're proud of. This is for the best. You can't keep living here like this. Mama wanted everything handled properly. I remember staring at her hands. They didn't shake. Mine did. I looked around the living room, Mama's reading glasses still on the side table, her cane by the door, the faint smell of lavender oil she used to rub on her wrists before bed. Nothing in that room felt like it belonged to Auntie Mae. Nothing in that room felt like it belonged to anybody but Mama and me. When I didn't say anything, she sighed like I was a child acting stubborn. You sign right here, she said, tapping the bottom of the form. The lawyers already looked it over. The house is mine now. It's time you moved on. Moved on. Like 30 years of caregiving, prayers, and quiet nights holding Mama's hand meant nothing. Like I was some tenant she was tired of dealing with. I signed because my hands were trembling too hard to argue. I signed because Darius and Alicia had told me just the night before, Mama, maybe Auntie Mae's right. Maybe she's handling things the way Grandma wanted. And when Auntie Mae walked out that door with the envelope tucked under her arm, I whispered to the empty room, Mama, did you really give her everything? What I didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Mama had left behind one last truth. And the person who would help me find it wasn't a lawyer, it was my best friend, Gloria. And that truth would burn Auntie Mae's whole reputation to the ground. Before we go on, tell me where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories coming soon. Most mornings in Cedar Ridge start the same way for me. I boil water in Mama's old steel kettle, open the curtains in the kitchen, and let the sunlight fall across the linoleum floor she refused to replace. I used to joke that this house was frozen in time. Now I understand Mama kept everything the same because it made her feel steady. Safe. Grounded. In those quiet mornings after Mama passed, I carried her favorite mug, the yellow one with the chipped rim, down the hallway the way I had done 1,000 times. Even though she was gone, I still moved through the house like she was sleeping in the next room. Habit can hold you long after a person can't. I set the mug on the table and pulled out the pill organizer she used to rely on. I know it sounds strange, but touching her things made me feel like she was still guiding me. There was comfort in small routines. In quiet places. In not having to think about what was coming. Right when I reached for the dish towel, I heard the screen door creak, followed by the unmistakable rhythm of heels clicking on the wood floor. Auntie Mae never knocked. Never waited. She acted like knocking was for people who needed permission to enter someone else's space. Marjorie, she called, a little too bright for a Tuesday morning. You up? We need to talk about a few things. My stomach tightened the same way it always did when her voice floated through my house. She sounded cheerful, but there was something beneath it. Something sharp. I wiped my hands on my apron and turned toward the hallway, not realizing how far she was willing to go. And I wasn't ready. Not even close. I carried the breakfast tray into Mama's old room the way I used to, even though the bed was empty now. The morning light always landed on her pillow first, soft, warm, gentle. Just how she liked it. Some days I'd sit at the foot of the bed and talk to her like she was still there. Not out loud, just in my head. It made the silence less heavy. Back when she was alive, this room was my world. I fed her here, read scripture to her here, held her hand when the pain got bad. I learned every sound she made, every cough, every sigh, every whisper of "I'm all right, baby," even when she wasn't. People talk about caregiving like it's just cooking meals and handing out medicine. But it's the waiting that wears you down, the slow, steady watching of someone you love fade a little more each week. I'd left my job at the thrift store to be home full-time. Bills got tight, but we managed. Mama was my priority. She always had been. Around lunchtime, my son Darius and his wife, Alicia, stopped by. They brought chicken and biscuits from Nellie's diner. Darius hugged me quick, distracted, already checking something on his phone. Alicia gave me that soft, careful smile she uses when she doesn't know how to help. "You holding up okay, Ma?" Darius asked, standing in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he should step inside or stay out. "I'm doing my best," I said. "Some days feel longer than others." He nodded but didn't look convinced. Alicia squeezed my arm, whispering, "Call us if you need anything, all right?" But we all knew they wouldn't be back for a while. And as they headed out, I watched them go, wishing someone could see how heavy this house felt, and how alone I truly was. Later that afternoon, I found Auntie Mae sitting at Mama's kitchen table with a stack of papers spread out like she owned the place. She had her reading glasses perched low on her nose and that same dark navy hat resting on the chair beside her. The good hat. The one she wore when she wanted people to take her seriously. "Marjorie, come on in," she said without looking up. "We need to go over some things." My stomach tightened again. Anytime Auntie Mae started a sentence with "we," it usually meant she had already made all the decisions. I sat across from her, smoothing the edge of a placemat just to keep my hands from fidgeting. She lifted one paper and tapped it with a manicured nail. "These are Mama's charity pledges," she said. "And here are the property taxes. They're higher than last year. Much higher." She slid the paper toward me like she expected me to understand all the numbers. I didn't. Mama handled her bills until she couldn't, and after that, Auntie Mae swooped in with her folders and her clipped little sighs. I'd asked questions before, but she'd always said, "Don't trouble yourself with this, Marjorie. You've got enough on your mind." Is something wrong?" I asked quietly. Auntie Mae gave a small, dramatic exhale. "Well, your mother didn't have as much put aside as she should have. I've been helping keep things afloat. Paying a few things out of pocket. Fixing what needed fixing." I felt a pinch of guilt, like I'd failed somehow. "If you'd worked a little instead of sitting home all day," she added lightly, "maybe we wouldn't be in this tight spot." The word stung, but I kept silent. Because every time Auntie Mae talked about money, I felt smaller, dimmer, and a little more unsure of myself. And she knew that. She always knew. The night Mama was admitted for the last time, the hospital halls were so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I remember sitting beside her bed, holding her hand the way I used to when I was a little girl afraid of thunderstorms. Her skin felt thinner than tissue paper. Every breath she took had a soft rattle behind it, like her lungs were fighting to keep her here. She opened her eyes slowly when I whispered her name. "I'm right here, Mama," I said. "You rest. I'm not going anywhere." She squeezed my fingers weakly. Her voice came out in a faint whisper. "Marjorie, baby, you make sure you stay in that house. Don't let nobody push you out." I thought she meant emotionally, thought she was talking about keeping the memories alive. So I nodded and brushed her hair back. "I'll take care of it, Mama. You don't worry about a thing." But she shook her head a little, straining to speak again. "I left something for you. Something important. In that little book I keep by the bed. If things get cloudy, look inside. Gloria knows." I leaned in closer. "What book?" "Mama, what do you mean?" Before she could finish, the door swung open and Auntie Mae walked in wearing her choir rehearsal dress and too strong perfume. "Oh Lord," I rushed over as soon as I heard, she announced to the nurses like she was on a stage. Mama tried to speak again, but her voice cracked. Mae moved beside her, blocking my view, patting Mama's shoulder in big showy motions. "Hush now, big sister. Don't strain yourself. Mama's hand trembled in mine. She tried to lift her finger toward the doorway, as if pointing home, but her strength faded. And I didn't realize until much later that she wasn't pointing at the house. She was trying to point me toward the truth she feared Auntie Mae would bury. Mama's funeral was held at New Hope Baptist, the same church she'd attended since before I was born. The sanctuary was packed, every seat filled, every fan waving, every hymn echoing off the white walls. Folks in Cedar Ridge show up when someone passes, even if they haven't visited in years. That's just how it is. But for a service meant to honor Mama, it felt like I didn't belong. Auntie Mae had planned everything. The flowers. The songs. The obituary. Even the order of speakers. When I asked if we could include Mama's favorite psalm in the program, she gave me a tight smile. Marjorie, this isn't the time for sentiment. I already arranged something tasteful. During the service, people whispered about how strong Auntie Mae looked standing up there, how gracefully she carried the loss. Every blessing and amen seemed to float toward her like she was the grieving daughter and I was something else. Some kind of afterthought. When it was time for reflections, I stood up, clutching the note card I'd written so I wouldn't fall apart. But Auntie Mae caught my arm gently, too gently, and whispered, "We're keeping it short, dear. We can't have everyone talking." Everyone? I was her daughter. I sat back down, feeling heat creep up my neck as the choir hummed softly. A cousin leaned over and whispered, "Don't take it personal, Marjorie. Mae's just trying to keep the program on track." Easy for her to say. After the service, people gathered around Auntie Mae, offering hugs and casseroles. I stood off to the side, watching as she held court near the pulpit, wiping a perfectly timed tear. And just as the crowd started to thin, she placed her hand on my shoulder and said quietly, almost like a warning, "There's something we need to discuss. Something Mama wanted done right." The words settled in my stomach like stones. I knew then something was coming. But I didn't know how bad it would be. 2 days after the funeral, Auntie Mae told everyone to meet at Mama's house. Just a small family discussion, she said, but she arrived carrying a leather folder like she was hosting a business meeting. The living room still smelled like roses from the service, and Mama's favorite crocheted blanket was draped neatly over the sofa. Nothing in that room was ready for what was about to happen. Neither was I. Relatives filled the space, cousins, second cousins, a few people I hadn't seen since high school. They perched on armrests, stood in doorways, whispered in corners. I sat in Mama's recliner, clutching the arms so tight my fingers tingled. Auntie Mae cleared her throat dramatically. "Family, I want to honor Mama's wishes. She trusted me to handle her affairs. So I have the most recent documentation here." She pulled out a crisp, printed will and laid it on the coffee table like a prize she was unveiling. According to the document, everything, the house, the land, the small savings Mama had left, was bequeathed to Auntie Mae. There was a line about me staying in the house temporarily, but no ownership. No security. No acknowledgement of the years I spent caring for Mama. I felt the air leave my chest. A cousin murmured, "Well, Mae always was the responsible one." Another said, "Maybe Marjorie didn't want the burden." Darius looked stunned, but instead of speaking up, he rubbed the back of his neck and said softly, "Maybe Grandma thought Auntie Mae could handle the finances better." Handle? Handle? I stared at the signature, my mother's name in shaky pen. The date was only a few weeks before she passed. Right when she could barely lift a fork. "I don't understand," I whispered. Auntie Mae leaned closer, her voice gentle but sharp underneath. "You don't need to, Marjorie. Mama trusted me. And I'm doing what's best." For the first time, I felt something crack inside me, something deep, something quiet. It was the sound of a daughter losing her place in her own mother's story. I don't know what made me speak up. Maybe it was the way the room went quiet after Auntie Mae finished reading, like everyone was waiting to see if I'd cry or sit there like a ghost. Maybe it was the way Mama's picture on the wall seemed to tilt toward me, like she was begging me not to stay silent. "I remember Mama telling me I'd be safe here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She told me the house was for me. For my future. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably. Nobody met my eyes. Auntie Mae let out a soft, pitying sigh, the kind people give when a child asks a question they think is too grown. Marjorie, she said, placing a careful hand on my arm, you're confused. Grief does that. Mama didn't want you worried about responsibilities you couldn't manage. I'm not confused, I said, forcing the words out before my courage slipped away. Mama promised me, now let's not start rewriting things, she interrupted, her voice warm but razor sharp. Mama needed someone organized. Someone stable. That's why she put everything in my hands. She looked around the room, gathering nods like they were votes. Y'all know how much Marjorie has been through lately. A cousin murmured, she's right, you've had a lot on your plate. Another added, maybe it's best this way. The room felt like it was shrinking. Every breath heavier than the last. Darius stepped forward, torn. Mom, maybe we should talk to a professional? Just to understand the paperwork. But he didn't oppose her. He didn't question the will. And Auntie Mae smiled at me, sweet as syrup. See? Everyone's just trying to help. But I felt the truth under her words, cold, hard, deliberate. She wasn't helping me. She was burying me. And the worst part was, everyone else was letting her. 2 days after that awful family gathering, Auntie Mae called and told me we needed to handle some final legalities. Her tone made it sound like a chore she didn't have time for. She drove us down to a small brick law office on the edge of Cedar Ridge, the kind with faded blinds and a plastic plant in the window. The receptionist barely looked up when we entered. A clerk in a wrinkled shirt ushered us into a cramped room that smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. He shuffled through a drawer and pulled out a file with Mama's name on it. This is the most recent will we have on record, he said, sliding the document across the table. I stared at the pages, the neat typed paragraphs that made no sense to me. The word executor looked blurry. The dates ran together. Legal language always felt like another world, cold, distant, meant for people who knew how to navigate it. People who weren't me. Auntie Mae crossed her legs and folded her hands, looking like she'd rehearsed for this moment. See, Marjorie? Everything's exactly as Mama wanted. The clerk nodded, barely glancing up. If this is the last valid will, it stands unless contested. But contesting is difficult and rarely successful. I felt my throat tighten. Contest? How could I contest something I couldn't even read without getting dizzy? Her signature's right there, Auntie Mae added, tapping the bottom of the page. Clear as day. I looked at the shaky handwriting. It was Mama's name, but the date made my stomach twist. It was written just weeks before she passed, when she couldn't hold a spoon steady, let alone sign stacks of documents. I just don't understand, I murmured. The clerk offered a polite, practiced smile. You don't need to. Everything is already in order. Auntie Mae placed a firm hand on my shoulder. And in that stale little office, surrounded by papers I didn't have the knowledge, or the courage, to question, I felt the last bit of ground shift beneath my feet. I didn't know it yet, but this was the moment I let her win, just long enough for the truth to find me later. The eviction notice came 3 days after the visit to the law office. 3 days of me walking around Mama's house like a shadow, touching her quilt, straightening picture frames, trying to convince myself everything would somehow settle itself. People in Cedar Ridge always say, give things time, baby. Time fixes things. But this wasn't something time could fix. That morning, I was in the living room dusting Mama's china cabinet when I heard the gravel crunch outside. Auntie Mae's car door slammed, then her heels clicked up the porch steps. I didn't even have time to breathe before she pushed the door open like it was her God-given right. Marjorie, we need to finalize a few things, she said, already reaching into her oversized purse. She pulled out a thick envelope and pressed it into my hands. It's official now. I need you to be out of the house in 30 days. 30 days. The room spun for a moment. Mama's rocking chair. The family Bible on the coffee table. The photo of me and Mama at the county fair. all of it blurred. I live here, I whispered. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. I know this is hard, she replied, her tone warm but her eyes sharp. But I need to sell the property. It's what Mama wanted. No, I said, shaking my head. Mama told me, grief makes memories unreliable, Marjorie, she said quickly. This is the best thing for everyone. I looked down at the notice. Legal words I didn't understand stared back at me. Behind Auntie Mae, Mama's picture hung on the wall, tilted slightly, like she was watching. Like she was trying to speak. My hands trembled as I signed the acknowledgement slip she shoved at me. I didn't know what else to do. Outside, neighbors paused as Auntie Mae strutted back to her car. In a small southern town, silence can be louder than gossip. And as she drove away, leaving dust rising in the morning sun, I felt something break inside me, quiet, deep, final. It felt like losing Mama all over again. That night, the house felt heavier than it ever had. I sat on the edge of Mama's bed, the eviction notice lying beside me like a verdict I couldn't appeal. The moonlight slipped through the curtains and stretched across the floorboards, landing on the spot where Mama kept her old wooden trunk. I used to tease her about keeping so many sentimental things, but now those things were all I had left. I slid down to the floor and pulled the trunk out. It groaned softly, like it didn't want to be moved. Inside were folded blankets, a few church bulletins, and Mama's favorite shawl. I pressed it to my face, breathing in that faint lavender scent she loved. That's when I saw it, the small cloth pouch tucked in the corner beneath a stack of hymn books. I didn't remember seeing it before. My hands shook as I pulled it out. Inside was Mama's prayer journal, the worn maroon one she kept on her nightstand. The one she prayed over every morning. I opened the cover, expecting to see her neat handwriting, scripture verses, names of people she prayed for, little notes about gratitude. But there was something else. A tiny piece of paper, taped to the inside cover. The edges were yellowed, the ink slightly faded. Across the top, in Mama's handwriting, it said, "For Gloria, if needed." Underneath were a set of numbers and letters, something that looked like a username or a password. I didn't understand it. Technology had never been my world. And without Mama here to explain, it felt like a puzzle I didn't have the pieces for. I held the journal against my chest and cried until the room blurred. I thought I'd lost everything. But in that moment, without knowing it, I was holding the first thread of the truth Mama left behind. The truth Auntie Mae never expected me to find. The next morning, I called Gloria. My hands were still shaking, and I could barely get the words out. She didn't even let me finish. "Sit tight," she said. "I'm on my way." 15 minutes later, she was standing in Mama's bedroom doorway, still wearing her choir rehearsal t-shirt and holding a travel mug of coffee. She took one look at my face and set the mug down without saying a word. Then she came over and pulled me into the kind of hug that makes you feel like you're not drowning alone. When I finally told her everything about the eviction notice, the new will, the signatures, the way Auntie Mae talked over me, her expression changed. Soft at first, then sharper. "That woman always did think she could outsmart everybody," she muttered. But she should have remembered I was in Mama's corner too. I handed her the prayer journal. "Mama said something about this. That you'd know." Gloria sat on the bed, flipping through the pages carefully. When her fingers reached the small taped note with the scribbled password, she froze. "Oh my lord," she whispered. "Marjorie. I think I know what this is." "What?" I asked, heart thudding. "This looks like the login Mama used for that church prayer app. Remember? I helped her set it up about 2 years ago when she wanted to record her morning prayers. Mama recorded her prayers nearly every morning, said it helped her feel steady when everything else felt shaky." I blinked at her. "Record? Like voice recordings?" Gloria nodded slowly, her eyes widening. "If she left these credentials for me." "Marjorie, your Mama might have said more than we ever knew." My breath caught. For the first time since that eviction notice, something inside me flickered, small, trembling, but real. Hope. Gloria clicked her tongue, already reaching for her phone. Let's hear what your mama had to say. And just like that, the ground didn't feel so shaky anymore. Gloria sat at Mama's old vanity, phone in one hand, prayer journal in the other. I hovered behind her like a child afraid of bad news. She typed slowly, double-checking each letter and number from the taped note. When she finally pressed enter, the phone screen lit up, and a list of audio files appeared. My knees went weak. There were dates, dozens of them, stretching back months. Each one marked with a small microphone icon. Gloria tapped the earliest one. Mama's voice filled the room. Soft, steady, familiar. Lord, give me strength today. Marjorie been running herself thin taking care of me. I want this house to be hers, so she don't ever fear not having a place in this world. I clutched the bed frame, tears rising before I could stop them. Gloria paused the recording, eyes wide. Marjorie, she breathed, she said it plain. She tapped the next one. I told Mae again this morning, this house is for Marjorie. I won't be moved on that. A woman needs security. And another. Mae keeps trying to bring me papers. I'm tired. I don't want to sign nothing new. Lord, help her accept that. A cold, electric chill rushed through me. Mama had been clear. Repeatedly. On different days. In her own voice. Not confused. Not manipulated. Just firm. Gloria placed a steady hand on my arm. This isn't just evidence, Marjorie. This is truth in your mama's own words. I covered my mouth, shaking. I didn't know. She never told me she said all that. She didn't need to, Gloria said softly. She left it for us. I sank onto the bed as Gloria downloaded every single file onto her phone. For the first time, I felt something solid beneath me, something Auntie Mae couldn't twist or drown out. Mama had spoken. And now the world was going to hear her. Gloria insisted we go to the bank that same afternoon. Truth don't wait, she said, slipping her purse over her shoulder like a woman preparing for battle. I followed behind her, clutching Mama's prayer journal like it was a lifeline. Cedar Ridge First Bank was small, 2 tellers, a coffee machine, and a stack of outdated pamphlets about savings bonds. Ms. Jordan Fields, a young clerk with neat braids and bright eyes, recognized me immediately. Mrs. King, I'm so sorry about your mother, she said gently. How can I help you today? Gloria stepped forward, polite but purposeful. We wanted to ask about Mrs. Lottie King's safety deposit box. Does the bank have records of who accessed it in the last year? Ms. Jordan hesitated, glancing around. I can't release anything without proper authorization or a legal request, unless there was something irregular. She lowered her voice. Was there something irregular? Gloria shared a quick look with me, then leaned in. We believe so. Ms. Jordan's expression shifted, sympathy turning into something sharper. I remember your aunt, she said quietly. She came in several times. Always said she was helping your mother. But your mother wasn't there with her. My heart dropped. Mama never came with her? Ms. Jordan shook her head. Not once. And the last visit your aunt made, your mother was already in the hospital. A cold wave washed over me. Gloria's jaw tightened. Can you confirm the dates if an attorney requests them? Gloria asked. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Jordan said. Everything's logged. Every access. Every signature. I gripped the counter to steady myself. All this time, I thought Auntie Mae was the responsible one. The dependable one. But now, piece by piece, her truth was cracking. And Mama's truth was rising up behind it. When Gloria and I got back to the house, the sun was already slipping low behind the magnolia trees. My head felt heavy, stuffed full of Mama's recordings, Ms. Jordan's words, and the slow-boiling fear that had become my constant companion. I wasn't sure what to do next. My hands kept shaking. Gloria sat me down on the couch. You need to tell Darius, she said. Your son needs to hear the truth from you, not from Mae. I wanted to argue. I wanted to hide. Instead, I picked up the phone with trembling fingers and dialed his number. He answered on the third ring. Hey, Ma. Everything okay? No, I whispered. Can you come by for a minute? 20 minutes later, he walked through the door, looking tired from work, still in his button-up shirt. He took one look at my face and stopped. What happened? Gloria nudged me. I opened the prayer journal and slid my phone toward him. Mama left these recordings, I said. She said the house was supposed to be mine. Darius frowned, confused. Recordings? What recordings? Gloria pressed play on the first one, the one where Mama prayed for me to keep the house. Darius froze. His eyes shifted from the phone to me, then back to the phone again. When the second recording mentioned Auntie Mae pressuring Mama to sign papers, he exhaled sharply. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? He asked, voice soft but strained. I just found them today, I said. I didn't know how. He rubbed his temples. This is a lot, Ma. But, okay. Maybe you should talk to a lawyer. Someone who can explain what this means. It wasn't full belief. It wasn't full support. But it wasn't dismissal. It was the first time in weeks my son didn't look past me. A small step. A small win. And in my fragile state, it felt like a miracle. The next morning, Gloria drove us to the law office in her old Buick, humming under her breath like she always did when she was nervous but pretending not to be. I sat in the passenger seat clutching the prayer journal, feeling like a schoolgirl about to confess something she wasn't sure anyone would believe. Attorney Malik Foster's office was downtown, small, tidy, and lined with framed certificates. When we walked in, he greeted us with a gentle nod, a man who didn't waste words. Mrs. King, Miss Pierce, he said, gesturing for us to sit. Tell me what brings you in. My voice shook as I explained. The will. The eviction. The confusion. The way Auntie Mae talked so sure, so final. Malik listened without interrupting, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. Gloria nudged the journal toward him. There's more, she said. She pulled out her phone and opened the first recording. When Mama's voice filled the room, steady, calm, certain, Malik's eyes narrowed just slightly. When the second recording mentioned Mae trying to bring papers for Mama to sign, he leaned forward. Are these dated? He asked. Yes, Gloria replied. All time-stamped in the prayer app. And you said the bank can confirm the aunt's deposit box visits? Yes, I whispered. Ms. Jordan said the logs show it. Malik tapped his pen on the desk, thoughtful. I'll be honest with you, Mrs. King. Contesting a will is difficult. Judges don't overturn lightly. He paused. But what you have here, this is unusual. Compelling. Your mother's intent is very clear. My heart fluttered with something I hadn't felt in weeks, cautious hope. Malik closed the journal, folded his hands, and said, if you're willing to fight, I'll take your case. Gloria squeezed my hand under the table. For the first time, I didn't feel completely powerless. By the next afternoon, Malik had drafted the formal request for the estate records. Gloria faxed it from the corner store since my old printer hadn't worked in years. I wasn't prepared for how fast the news would travel in Cedar Ridge. Before we even made it back to the house, Auntie Mae was calling. Her name flashed across my phone like a warning. I swallowed hard before answering. Hello? She didn't bother with greetings. What is this mess you've started? She snapped, her voice tight with controlled fury. You went to a lawyer? You're challenging Mama's will? I took a breath, small and shaky. I just want to understand what happened. Mama said, don't you dare twist her words, she cut in, voice rising. You are grieving, Marjorie. People say foolish things when they're lost. But this? This is irresponsible. Gloria, sitting beside me on the couch, mouthed put it on speaker. I did. Auntie Mae continued, voice dripping with indignation. Do you know how this makes the family look? How it makes me look. You're accusing me of things you don't understand. I'm not accusing you, I whispered. You're stirring up trouble, she hissed. And you're going to lose. These cases never go anywhere. Never. And when this blows up, you'll be standing alone. Remember that. Gloria leaned forward and said sharply, what she remembers is that Mama had a voice, and we heard it. The line went silent. Dead quiet. Then Auntie Mae spoke again, but her tone had changed, lower, colder. If you push this, Marjorie, you'll regret it. She hung up. My hands trembled as I set the phone down. Gloria put an arm around my shoulders. She's scared, she said. That's all that was. But all I felt was the fear creeping up my spine, followed by the slow burn of something stronger. Resolve. Sunday came faster than I wanted. I almost didn't go to New Hope, but Gloria squeezed my hand and said, if you stay home, that woman wins the whole narrative before we even start. So I put on my best dress and walked in beside her, praying my knees wouldn't buckle. The moment we stepped into the sanctuary, the air shifted. Conversations dipped. A few women from the usher board glanced at me, then quickly looked away like they'd been caught staring at something they shouldn't. Cedar Ridge wasn't a big town, news traveled on church benches faster than any newspaper ever could. As the choir began warming up, I spotted Auntie Mae near the front, wearing a white hat tall enough to scrape the clouds. She turned dramatically, her face tightening just enough to show she'd seen me, then smoothing into a perfect mask of sorrow. Before service started, she made her move. She pulled 3 deaconesses into a little circle and began speaking in soft, trembling tones, loud enough for the nearby pews to hear. Marjorie is struggling, she said, pressing a tissue to her cheek. Grief has her confused. She's making accusations that they aren't healthy. Bless her heart. The women gasped softly. One clutched her pearls. None of them looked toward me. Gloria's jaw flexed. She's staging a whole play, she whispered. And half this church is buying a ticket. I swallowed hard, heat climbing up my neck. Just then, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned to see Mrs. Okada, the retired nurse who lived 2 streets over. She slipped a folded note into my hand, her eyes gentle but alert. We need to talk, she murmured. I've seen things too. Before I could respond, the choir began the opening hymn. But all I could hear was the pounding in my chest, and the quiet promise forming inside me, the truth was spreading. And not even Auntie Mae could pray her way out of it forever. 2 days after that 10th Sunday service, Malik called and asked us to come in. His voice sounded calm, but there was an edge under it, like he was bracing for something. When Gloria and I walked into his office, he had a stack of papers on his desk thicker than a church cookbook. Your aunt made her move, he said. She filed a petition this morning. My heart dropped. Filed? What kind of petition? Malik slid the document toward me. I scanned the first lines, even though the legal language twisted my stomach into knots. Gloria leaned over my shoulder and read faster. Then she inhaled sharply. Marjorie, she's claiming you're unstable. I felt the room tilt. Malik nodded grimly. She's portraying you as emotionally fragile, irrational, and lashing out in grief. She's asking the court to dismiss your request entirely. I covered my mouth. Unstable? She's trying to silence you, Gloria said firmly. Trying to scare you into backing down. Malik tapped the papers again. Here's the part she didn't intend to help us with. He pulled out another sheet, bank access logs. To justify her petition, Mae submitted supplemental documentation showing her responsible handling of your mother's affairs. That includes a record of every time she accessed the safety deposit box. Gloria's eyes widened. Every time? Yes. Malik turned the pages so we could see. This includes visits made when your mother was hospitalized, and one made the day before your mother supposedly signed that final will. A slow, stunned silence filled the room. Mae had dug her own hole. Gloria grinned. Her pride just handed us the timeline. Malik leaned back, voice steady. This changes everything. We can prove opportunity, pattern, and motive. I felt a tremor inside me, fear, yes, but mixed with something new. A rising sense of power. For the first time, Auntie Mae's confidence wasn't crushing me. It was cracking. Later that afternoon, after leaving Malik's office, Gloria and I walked the 2 blocks to Mrs. Okada's house. Her place sat on the corner of Magnolia and Pine, white shutters, rose bushes trimmed neat as a soldier's haircut, wind chimes tinkling softly. She opened the door before we even knocked. "Come on in," she said gently. "I've been expecting you." She led us to her dining table, where a plate of shortbread cookies and 2 glasses of sweet tea were already waiting. But she didn't waste time with small talk. Instead, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a folded stack of index cards, edges worn and smudged like they'd been handled often. "I wrote these down for your mama," she said, pushing them toward me. She liked to keep track of things but couldn't always write it all herself near the end. I unfolded the first card. It listed dates. Short notes. 1-line reminders. All written in Mrs. Okada's small, careful handwriting. Paid rent from Mrs. Landers. May picked up envelope, said she'd take care of it. Talked with Lottie. She said Marjorie should keep house. My breath hitched. I looked up. "You kept these?" She nodded. "Your mama asked me to. She said things were getting mixed when May handled them." Her eyes softened. "Lottie trusted you more than she let on when May was around." Gloria leaned closer to the table. "Mrs. Okada, would you be willing to repeat any of this? In court?" The older woman hesitated, not out of fear, but out of the weight of doing the right thing in a small town where people remember everything. Finally, she folded her hands. "If it means clearing Lottie's name and protecting you?" "Yes. I'll do it." My throat tightened. Every truth Mama left behind was rising, piece by piece, voice by voice. And Auntie Mae was running out of shadows to hide in. The next morning, Gloria and I met Malik at his office again. He had a printout spread across his desk, a grid of dates and times highlighted in different colors. It looked like something far more complicated than anything I had ever dealt with in my life. But Malik's eyes were bright, focused. "This is the access log from the safety deposit box," he said. "Your aunt submitted it herself, thinking it proved she was acting responsibly." He tapped the first highlighted line. "This visit was 2 weeks before your mother's hospital stay, without Lottie present." Then he tapped the next one. "This one was 3 days before she signed the final will." Same thing, May alone. I swallowed hard. Mama couldn't even walk that week. Gloria leaned over the desk, her voice firm. "Exactly." Malik tapped the third line, the one in red. "And this one is the day before the supposed will was signed." Auntie Mae signed in, stayed 12 minutes, and left. My palms grew damp. The air in the room felt tight. "So she could have taken something out of the box?" I whispered. "She could have taken something out," Malik said, "or put something in. The point is, your mother wasn't there, couldn't have approved it, and the timeline lines up with her deteriorating health." He pulled out the prayer app recordings and the index cards from Mrs. Okada. "Now we have alignment between voice recordings showing your mother's intent, neighbor notes showing May intercepting things, bank logs showing unauthorized access, and the suspicious timing of the final will." Gloria folded her arms, satisfied. "It's a pattern. Plain as day." I stared at the papers, my voice barely audible. Mama was telling the truth, all along. Malik nodded. "And now we can prove it." A trembling wave of relief washed through me. For the first time, the case wasn't built on fear. It was built on evidence, real, solid, undeniable. And Auntie Mae had accidentally handed us the map. 2 days later, Malik called me with a tone that made my stomach clench. "Your aunt's attorney reached out," he said. "They want to propose a settlement." "A settlement?" My hands trembled as Gloria and I sat across from Malik in his office. He slid a thin envelope toward us. Inside was a typed offer that felt like a slap, a small payout, barely enough to cover a few months' rent, and an agreement to vacate the house quietly, without further disputes. Gloria let out a low, disgusted sound. They think we're fools. Malik nodded. They're assuming you're scared of the fight ahead, and that you don't understand how strong your case is becoming. I swallowed hard. Why now? My voice felt small, even to me. Because, Malik said gently, your aunt finally realizes you're not backing down. And that scares her. A guilty party seeks a quick escape. Gloria snatched the offer, waving it like a dirty rag. This is hush money. She wants you out before more truth comes out. But then Darius walked in. He'd met us at Malik's request, and the moment he saw the offer, his brow furrowed. Ma, maybe you should consider it, he said quietly. Court is expensive. Long, stressful. You've been through enough. His words hit me harder than I expected. My own son, trying to push me toward the door. Mama never wanted me to leave. Gloria spoke before I could. Darius, your grandmother said in her own voice she wanted Marjorie to have that house. This, she held up the offer, is theft wrapped in polite language. Darius looked torn, his eyes darting between us. I took a long, steady breath, one that shook at the end but still held. No, I said finally. Mama didn't raise me to take the scraps of someone else's lie. The room went silent. For the first time, I chose the fight. And that choice felt like its own kind of victory. Malik called us back to his office 2 days later. He sounded different this time, more energized, like he'd uncovered something important. When Gloria and I arrived, he already had a manila folder open on his desk, papers spread out like pieces of a puzzle he'd finally arranged. I tracked down an older document, he said. Your mother's previous will. My breath caught. Previous? Malik slid the papers toward me. The pages were yellowed around the edges, the ink slightly faded, but the signature at the bottom was unmistakably Mama's, strong, steady, written at a time when her hands didn't tremble. This will, Malik explained, tapping the top paragraph, leaves the house entirely to you, Marjorie. No conditions. No temporary occupancy. Just full ownership. My heart swelled and twisted at the same time. She really did mean for me to have it. Gloria squeezed my arm. Of course she did. She told us that in those recordings. Malik nodded. Exactly. But here's where it gets even more concerning. He pulled out the newer will, the one Auntie Mae had presented. The dates overlap with the period your mother's health declined sharply. Her hospice notes indicate she was heavily medicated. Yet this document claims she signed complex legal forms. He leaned back, expression firm. And your mother never revoked the earlier will. Not once. That alone raises questions. A cold realization washed over me. So Mae replaced it. Or tried to, Malik said. We can't say that outright until court. But the pattern we're seeing? Voice recordings, bank logs, neighbor notes, and now this earlier will? It paints a very clear picture. Gloria's voice was sharp with certainty. Mae didn't just twist things. She tried to rewrite your mother's wishes. I stared at Mama's older will, the one she'd signed when she could still walk Aleph and hold a pen with purpose. For the first time, I didn't feel confused. I felt angry. And anger, for the first time in a long time, felt like strength. It didn't take long for Auntie Mae to strike back. The day after Malik uncovered the earlier will, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts. All from Mae. I didn't answer. But she found another way. First, she called Darius. I knew the moment he walked into my living room that evening, shoulders tense, eyes troubled. He stood by the window, rubbing the back of his neck like he used to do when he got in trouble at school. Ma. Auntie Mae called, he began softly. She's worried about you. I almost laughed. Worried? She said you're overwhelmed. That you're letting people put ideas in your head. That you're, he paused, swallowing hard. Not thinking straight. The words hung in the air like smoke. Gloria let out a low, disgusted breath. She's playing the same tired game she ran at church. Darius lifted his hands in defense. I'm not saying I believe her, Ma. But she said you're accusing her of fraud. That you're dragging the family name through the mud. She said if you keep pushing this, things will get ugly. Ugly. The way he said it cut deeper than I expected. She also said, he continued, that she never meant to upset you, that she's trying to protect what Grandma wanted. Gloria stepped forward, voice sharp. Protect? By lying? By sneaking into that bank? By rewriting a woman's dying words? Gloria, please, Darius said, visibly torn. I'm just trying to understand. I looked at my son, my only child. Torn between truth and the woman who had always dazzled the family with her confidence and polished speeches. I'm not confused, I said quietly. And I'm not unstable. Your grandmother spoke. And Mae is trying to bury her voice. Darius looked down at his shoes, breathing slow. I don't want to lose the family over this, he whispered. A painful, honest truth. But so was mine. Baby, I said gently, I lost Mama already. I won't lose her wishes too. In that moment, I felt the line between us stretch, thin, fragile, trembling. But it didn't break. Not yet. By the following week, Malik said it was time to prepare for the formal hearing. Hearing. The word alone made my stomach flutter like loose papers in the wind. I'd never stepped foot in a courtroom except for jury duty, and even then, I'd been dismissed before noon. Now my mother's whole legacy rested on my shoulders. Gloria and I sat across from Malik as he arranged documents across his desk like a general mapping out a battlefield. Here's what we have, he said, tapping each item with controlled precision. Your mother's earlier will, clearly naming you as the sole owner of the house. Her prayer app recordings, time-stamped entries showing consistent intent. Bank access logs showing your aunt's unauthorized visits. And Mrs. Okada's index cards, documenting Mae taking envelopes and intercepting money. He leaned forward. It's strong. Very strong. But will the court listen? I asked, voice thin. They'll listen, Malik replied. Because intent and pattern are everything. Gloria, always thinking ahead, pulled a tablet from her bag. And don't forget this. She clicked open the old choir rehearsal video, the one where Mama looked tired but bright, speaking to the women who loved her. Marjorie keeps the house. That's settled, Mama said in the clip. Hearing her voice again made my eyes sting. Malik nodded slowly. This is powerful. Not legally binding, but emotionally compelling. And it reinforces everything else. He wrote a list on a yellow pad. Witnesses, Mrs. Okada, Ms. Jordan Fields from the bank, Gloria Pearson, me, Marjorie King. My chest tightened seeing my name at the bottom. You ready to speak? Malik asked softly. I exhaled shakily. I'm scared. Gloria took my hand. Being scared and being silent ain't the same thing. And for the first time, I believed her. Because this time, I wasn't walking into that courtroom alone. 2 nights before the hearing, I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard a sharp knock at the door, 3 quick taps, then silence. Not the polite kind. The demanding kind. Gloria wasn't with me. Darius hadn't checked in. I was alone. When I opened the door, Auntie Mae stood on the porch in a blazer too stiff for evening wear, her lips pressed into a thin line. Streetlight caught the edge of her pearl earrings, the ones she only wore when she wanted to look respectable. May I come in? She asked, though she was already stepping past me without waiting for an answer. My chest tightened. Why are you here? She turned slowly, surveying the living room like she was measuring it for curtains. I came to help you. Before you embarrass yourself in front of the entire county. Heat crawled up my neck. I'm not the one lying. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. Oh, Marjorie. You think those little recordings and gossip notes mean something? You think a judge will take the word of an emotional daughter over a documented will and a responsible executor? I swallowed hard. Mama's voice matters. Not as much as you think. She stepped closer, her perfume heavy, suffocating. Withdraw your contest. Take the settlement. Because if you go through with this hearing, her voice dropped, cold as winter metal. I will make sure every conversation, every mistake, every weakness you ever had is dragged out. People will see you as unstable, just like I said. I flinched. She saw it. And she smiled. But it doesn't have to be this way, she murmured. Sign the papers tomorrow, and we can end this quietly. I stared at her, this woman who stood in my mother's house like a conqueror, warning me like she owned my very breath. Something inside me shifted. A slow burn. A steady rise. No, I said. My voice was small, but it didn't waver. I'm not signing anything. Auntie Mae's jaw clenched. Her eyes hardened. You'll regret this, she hissed. Then she walked out, leaving the smell of perfume and the echo of threat behind her. But for once, her words didn't sink into me. They bounced off something stronger. The truth Mama left behind. The night before the hearing, I sat at the kitchen table staring at Mama's prayer journal. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Gloria had gone home to rest. Malik had told me to sleep, but sleep felt like something that belonged to other people. Around 9, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Darius stepped inside without knocking, his shoulders slumped, his face drawn tight. Ma, he said, closing the door gently behind him. We need to talk. I braced myself. What did she say this time? He ran a hand over his face, exhaling hard. Auntie Mae's attorney called me. He wants me to testify. He said I can speak to your emotional instability after Grandma passed. My heart clenched. Emotional instability? I told him I didn't want to be involved, he said quickly. But he kept pushing, saying it would help protect the family from a drawn-out fight. And you? I asked, my voice barely steady. What do you think? Darius looked down at the floor, then at his hands. I think this whole thing is tearing us apart. I think tomorrow is going to get ugly. And I think Auntie Mae believes she's right. She's convincing everyone she's right. For a moment, the room tilted. This was my son, the person I had loved through every scraped knee, every heartbreak, every hard season. And now he was being pulled into Mae's web. He stepped closer, voice low. Mom, maybe dropping this would be easier. A sharp ache bloomed in my chest. Easier for who? He didn't answer. I took a long breath. Baby, I don't need you to defend me. I just need you to tell the truth. Darius's eyes softened, painful, uncertain. I don't know what tomorrow will look like, he admitted. But I'll try, Ma. I'll try. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't reassurance. It was a fragile thread I barely holding. And as he walked out into the night, I felt the weight of what tomorrow meant. That night, the house fell silent, and my heart wouldn't stop shaking. Tomorrow, we'd step into the courthouse, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning of the hearing, Cedar Ridge felt different, like the whole town was holding its breath. The sky was overcast, heavy with that gray light that makes everything look more serious than it should. Gloria picked me up right at 8, her lips tight, her hands steady on the wheel. She kept saying, "We're ready, Marjorie. We're ready." But I could hear the worry beneath it. When we pulled up to the courthouse, my heart nearly stopped. People were gathered outside, neighbors, church members, even folks I hadn't spoken to since high school. Clusters of them stood in little knots on the sidewalk, whispering behind their hands as we walked up the steps. In a small town like Cedar Ridge, truth and rumor both travel with the same speed. Gloria squeezed my arm. Head up, baby. Let MC strength. But my legs felt like water. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wooden benches polished to a shine and flags standing stiff in the corner. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old paper. At the front table, Malik was already waiting for us, calm, steady, a presence strong enough to lean on. Then I saw her. Auntie Mae sat across the aisle, dressed in a pale lavender suit and matching hat, hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked like the picture of dignity, if you didn't know her. A few churchwomen flanked her pew, whispering and clutching their purses as if they were witnesses to some holy battle. Mae glanced at me, her expression smooth as stone. No fear. Just superiority. Gloria leaned toward me. Don't look at her crown. It's paper. I sat down beside Malik, the weight of the room pressing against my chest. The bailiff called for order. This was it. The truth was stepping into the light. And so was I. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The room fell so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat tapping against my ribs. Judge Riley, stern, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who missed nothing, took his seat and adjusted his glasses. We will begin with opening statements, he said. Auntie Mae's attorney stood first. A tall man with a polished voice and a rehearsed sympathy. Your Honor, this is a tragic case of grief clouding judgment, he began. My client, Ms. Mae Thompson, served as caretaker and executor for her dear sister. She acted responsibly, lovingly, and within the law. This challenge is a misunderstanding, nothing more. He gestured delicately toward me, as though I were a fragile vase that might crack under courtroom lighting. We ask the court to dismiss this unfounded contest. My cheeks burned. A few people in the audience nodded, already hooked by his smooth tone. Then Malik stood. Where the other attorney was polished, Malik was clean and direct. His voice didn't strain. It didn't tremble. It just carried. Your Honor, he began, this is not a case of confusion. It is a case of intent, pattern, and concealment. A murmur spread through the benches. He continued, we will show that Mrs. Lottie King expressed, multiple times, in her own words, her desire for her daughter, Marjorie King, to inherit the home she lived in her entire life. He paused, letting the weight of that reach every corner of the room. We will demonstrate suspicious access to her financial assets. Contradictory timelines. And testimony from neighbors. And yes, recordings. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Even Mae's attorney stiffened. Judge Riley leaned forward. Recordings? Yes, Your Honor, Malik said. Audio recordings made by the decedent herself. The courtroom went still. Auntie Mae's eyes finally flickered, one brief, unmistakable flash. The first crack in her mask. The judge called for the first witness, and when Ms. Jordan Fields stepped forward, I felt something loosen in my chest. She looked calm, neat braids, crisp blouse, steady eyes. Exactly the kind of woman Cedar Ridge trusted. She took the oath, then sat straight-backed in the witness chair as Malik approached. Miss Fields, he began, how long have you worked at Cedar Ridge First Bank? 7 years, she replied. And were you familiar with Mrs. Lottie King? Yes, sir. She came in often. Always pleasant. Malik nodded. Can you tell the court whether Mrs. King accessed her own safety deposit box during the last months of her life? Ms. Jordan folded her hands. Not once. A hum rolled through the courtroom. Malik continued, in that same time, did anyone else access the box? Yes. Ms. Mae Thompson. Her voice was firm, no hesitation. She visited several times. Always alone. I caught the quick flare in Mae's eyes, like a match striking in the dark. Malik lifted a page from the evidence file. Miss Fields, is this the bank's access log? Yes, sir. And is it accurate? Yes, sir. Every access is time-stamped and recorded. He handed her the sheet. Please read the entry from the day before the contested will was signed. Ms. Jordan scanned the page. Ms. Thompson accessed the box at 9:14 a.m. and left at 9:26 a.m. Malik let the silence hang, long enough for the room to absorb it. Finally he asked, was Mrs. King with her? No, sir, Ms. Jordan said, voice steady. Mrs. King was already hospitalized. A collective gasp swept through the benches. Mae's attorney shifted uncomfortably. Mae's face tightened, jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped beside her ear. Ms. Jordan looked toward me then, softly, kindly, as if to say she wasn't afraid. And for the first time in that courtroom, the truth didn't feel fragile. It felt inevitable. When Malik said the next piece of evidence would be an audio recording, the judge raised an eyebrow. A recording from the decedent? Judge Riley asked. Yes, Your Honor, Malik replied. A prayer recording, made weeks before her hospitalization. A rustle of whispers moved through the courtroom. I could feel the tension shift, sharp, electric, like everyone leaned forward at once. Malik connected his small speaker to his phone and glanced at me. You ready? He whispered. I nodded even though my throat had gone dry. The room fell completely silent as he pressed play. Mama's voice came through the speaker, soft, steady, unmistakable. Lord, help me protect my daughter, Marjorie. I told Mae again this morning, the house is for my child. That's what I want. That's what I've always wanted. Gasps rippled through the benches. One of the deaconesses covered her mouth. Someone whispered, My God. Malik let the recording play a moment longer. I won't sign nothing new. Not when I can barely hold a pen. Marjorie needs that home. It's hers. He stopped the audio and the silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Even the judge leaned back slowly, absorbing every word. Across the aisle, Mae's face had gone rigid, but her eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, darted around the room. People were staring at her, not with sympathy now, but with suspicion. Her attorney stood abruptly. Your Honor, this recording could be, it is time-stamped, Malik cut in smoothly. Verified by the app company. And consistent with every witness we've presented. Mae's attorney hesitated, caught, cornered. The judge cleared his throat. The decedent's voice is compelling. Very compelling. All around me, murmurs spread, like a tide turning. For the first time in my life, Mama's voice rose higher than Mae's reputation. And Mae felt it. Every single word. When the judge called Mrs. Okada to the stand, a hush fell over the courtroom. Not fear. Respect. She was the kind of woman Cedar Ridge trusted without question, quiet, observant, faithful to a fault. I watched her walk up, every step steady, hands folded neatly in front of her. She took the oath, then sat, smoothing her skirt before looking toward the judge with calm, clear eyes. Malik approached. Mrs. Okada, how long did you know Mrs. Lottie King? Oh, over 35 years, she said with a gentle smile. We were neighbors. Friends. And did you assist her in her final months? Yes. I helped her keep track of small things, appointments, visitors, money she received, and things she asked me to write down. Could you explain why you wrote them down? Her hands shook sometimes, she said softly. She wanted things recorded so they wouldn't get misremembered, as she put it. Malik slid the stack of index cards onto the evidence table. Are these yours? Yes, sir. Please read the note dated 1 month before Mrs. King passed. Mrs. Okada picked up the card, reading aloud. Mae picked up envelope from Mrs. Landers, said she'd handle it. Lottie concerned. Says Marjorie should keep house. Whispers exploded across the room. Thank you, Malik said. And this next card, dated 3 days before the disputed will? She read again, Lottie upset. Mae keeps bringing papers. Says she won't sign anything new. Wants Marjorie safe. A murmur rippled all the way to the back benches. Someone muttered, Lord have mercy. Mae's attorney shifted uncomfortably. Mae stared straight ahead, jaw locked, but her chest rose and fell faster than before. Malik asked gently, Mrs. Okada, did you ever see Mrs. King express a desire for Mae to have the house? No, she said firmly. Not once. She wanted Marjorie protected. The judge watched closely, expression unreadable, but eyes sharp. And in the pews behind Mae, people began trading looks. Doubting. Questioning. Mae wasn't just losing the case. She was losing her audience. Her image. Her grip on the town. And the fall had only just begun. When the judge called Auntie Mae to the stand, the entire courtroom shifted. People leaned forward. Fans stilled mid-wave. Even the air felt tighter. Mae walked up slowly, chin high, lavender suit crisp as a starched napkin. She settled into the chair like she was seating herself at a church banquet, not a legal hearing. Her attorney smiled reassuringly as she took the oath. Then he began with a soft, guiding voice. "Miss Thompson, can you describe your relationship with your late sister?" Mae placed a delicate hand over her chest. "Oh, we were very close. I helped her with everything, her finances, her health decisions, her paperwork. She trusted me." A few sympathetic murmurs floated from her church circle. "And did she express to you her wishes regarding her home?" "Yes," Mae said confidently. "She told me she wanted me to handle it. That Marjorie wasn't, well," she paused theatrically, "strong enough to manage it all." I felt Gloria stiffen beside me. Then Malik stepped forward. His tone was calm, smooth, unforgiving. "Miss Thompson, you've testified that your sister asked you to manage her affairs. Did she ever physically accompany you to the bank when you accessed her safety deposit box?" Mae blinked. "She wasn't feeling well. I helped her by going in her place." "Is that allowed?" Malik asked. Her lips pinched. "They knew me. It was fine." "So," Malik continued, "you handled her valuables alone?" "Repeatedly? Even when she was hospitalized?" Mae hesitated just for a breath, but the room caught it. "Well, yes. She trusted me." A wave of whispers broke out. Malik held up the bank access log. "According to these records, your last visit occurred the day before the contested will was signed." "Why?" Her face tightened. "Because I was preparing things." "What things?" A flicker of panic flashed in her eyes. I don't recall." The crowd murmured louder. For the first time, in front of the entire town, Auntie Mae's composure cracked. And everyone saw it. Malik stepped closer to the witness stand, not aggressive, just steady, deliberate. The kind of calm that makes guilty people sweat. "Miss Thompson," he said evenly, "you testified that your sister trusted you to manage her affairs. So let me ask, why did you not inform her daughter, her only child, about the changes in the will?" Mae's fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. "Marjorie was too emotional. I didn't want to burden her." Malik nodded slowly. "Too emotional to hear her own mother's wishes, but not too emotional to be evicted." A ripple of low murmurs ran through the benches. Mae's jaw tensed. "I was following Lottie's wishes." Malik held up a paper. "According to this, dated 3 months before the contested will, Mrs. King explicitly named Marjorie as the sole beneficiary. No mention of you handling the home." Mae blinked hard, lips twitching. "Things changed." "Changed," Malik repeated, "while her health declined? While she could barely hold a pen? While you alone accessed her safety deposit box?" Mae's nostrils flared. "I did what needed to be done." There it was. The first slip. The first real show of temper. Malik didn't flinch. "So you made those decisions for her?" I helped her," she stammered. "Helped," he echoed, "by submitting a new will dated the day after you visited her deposit box alone?" Mae's attorney rose abruptly. "Objection. Counsel is implying wrongdoing without direct proof." Judge Riley turned his sharp gaze toward Mae. "Miss Thompson, answer the question." Mae looked cornered, eyes darting, breath quickened. I don't remember the exact details," she managed. "That," Malik said softly, "is becoming clear." The room buzzed like a hive struck with a stick. Mae wasn't just slipping. She was sinking. And Cedar Ridge was watching every second of it. Judge Riley called for a brief recess, but nobody moved. Not really. People stood, whispered, stared, some at Mae, some at me, some at the bench like they weren't sure what to believe anymore. The courthouse felt thick with judgment and curiosity, the kind Cedar Ridge fed on for generations. Mae's attorney leaned down to whisper sharply in her ear, but she jerked away, face flushed a deep, angry red. Her polished composure was slipping like sweat under makeup. Gloria nudged me. She's cracking, baby. Don't you look away now. When the judge returned, he asked Mae one simple question. Miss Thompson, do you have any written or recorded statement, any at all, where the decedent expresses a wish for you to inherit the home? Mae stiffened. I told you. She said it to me privately. Answered privately? Malik repeated, stepping forward. Privately, when no one else was around. No witnesses. No writing. No recordings. Yet we have your sister, in her own voice, saying the exact opposite. Mae's eyes narrowed. Those recordings could have been, don't even try it, Gloria muttered under her breath. The judge lifted a hand. Ms. Thompson, the court will not tolerate accusations without basis. Mae's shoulders rose and fell in a fast, panicked rhythm. Something in her snapped. She didn't understand what she was saying. Mae burst out, voice shrill. She wasn't thinking clearly. I handled everything. I kept this family together while Marjorie, the courtroom gasped. Someone whispered, Lord, she's losing it. The judge's face hardened. Miss Thompson, control yourself. But Mae couldn't stop. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't stitch the mask back together. She owed me. Mae cried, hands shaking. After all I did, she owed me that house. Silence. Pure, weighted silence. People stared at her like they'd never really seen her before. Because they hadn't. And now? They saw everything. Judge Riley let Mae's outburst hang in the air longer than felt possible. The silence was so deep it almost hummed. Even the ceiling fans seemed to slow, as if the whole courthouse leaned in to watch her crumble. Mae's attorney sank into his chair, rubbing his forehead like a man who had just watched his entire case catch fire. Judge Riley finally cleared his throat, a single sound that snapped the room back into order. Miss Thompson, he said sternly, your behavior today has been deeply concerning. Mae stared down at the table, shoulders trembling with a mix of anger and humiliation. He continued, voice steady but cold, this court has heard clear, consistent evidence of the decedent's intentions. Evidence supported by recordings, witnesses, and written documents, not speculation, not recollection clouded by personal interest. Several people shifted in their seats, nodding quietly. In contrast, the judge went on, your testimony shows inconsistencies and emotional volatility. From the bank access logs to the recorded statements, the pattern is undeniable. Mae closed her eyes, as though each word struck her. Judge Riley turned toward me, really looked at me. Mrs. Marjorie King, he said, your mother's earlier will stands. You are recognized as the rightful heir to the property. My breath collapsed into a sob I couldn't hold back. Gloria squeezed my hand so tight I thought our fingers might fuse together. Then the judge delivered the final blow. Furthermore, Ms. Thompson, due to your actions, the court is ordering a full review of your handling of the estate, including financial activities and document management. Gasps erupted across the room, sharp, loud, echoing. Mae's head snapped up, eyes wide, lips trembling. Her downfall wasn't just legal. It was public. Complete. Undeniable. And Cedar Ridge witnessed every second of it. When we stepped out of the courthouse, the late afternoon sun hit my face like a blessing I didn't expect. The crowd that had gathered earlier was still there, but the whispers were different now. Softer. Surprised. Some even respectful. People who wouldn't look at me 2 weeks ago nodded as I passed. A few muttered, good for her, under their breath. Auntie Mae didn't come outside right away. When she finally did, she moved slowly, her lavender suit losing all its shine under the scrutiny of Cedar Ridge. Nobody rushed to her. Not the deaconesses. Not the cousins. Not the neighbors she once charmed with polished words and tight smiles. Her fall was quiet. And loud. And complete. Gloria wrapped an arm around me as we walked down the steps. You did it, baby, she said. You stood up for yourself. For your mama. I pressed the prayer journal to my chest. I just wanted the truth. That's why it worked, she answered. Truth don't need to shout. It just needs daylight. When we got back to the house, my house now, I stepped into Mama's room and sat on the edge of her bed. The same place where I once cried over eviction papers. The same place where I first found her clue, tucked away in that journal she prayed over every morning. I opened the window a little. The breeze carried in the smell of pine and fresh-cut grass. It felt like the house exhaled with me. I did it, Mama, I whispered. I kept your promise. No audience. No judge. No lawyer. Just me, and the quiet peace that comes when justice finally settles into its rightful place. I didn't gain everything. I lost pieces along the way, illusions, relationships, certainty. But I kept the truth. I kept my home. And I kept my mother's voice alive. In Cedar Ridge, that kind of victory echoes longer than any lie ever could. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt whole again. If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it. If you have a unique story of your own, share it in the comments below. Thank you for listening.